Hello everyone, we're back again with another pensions video. My name is Shay Donald, I'm your National Vice Chair of the Police Federation. I'm joined by Alex Duncan, the National Secretary of the Police Federation, and Alex's remit is pensions. So we're bringing you another video, a timely one, because we've recently seen the release by government of the pensions consultation document. We've been inundated with queries, although the document covers 72 pages of how they're going to fix the remedy. What in fact it's done is create more questions than answers. I'm going to try and pick through some of those questions that have been coming in, questions posed to me directly, and hopefully Alex can assist in answering them. But what we need to say is that we're only on the first part of this process, and Alex will cover how and what will happen in those next stages. So, you happy to carry on, Alex?
Of course.
And we'll get stuck right into it. So, the first thing I'm going to pick out on is the consultation response itself. It mentions the 1st of April 2022. But then again, it talks about October 2023. And this is confusing members. Some think that on the 1st of April 2022, this is where everyone goes into care, or is it October 2023? Do I get a little bit of extra time in the scheme? Can you explain the difference between those two key dates?
Yeah, absolutely. So the remedy period, which is the period when everybody will be given the choice between whether they stay in their original scheme or have that time in the care scheme, ends the end of March 2022. So as of the 1st of April 2022, everybody, irrespective of whether they had previously understood they were going to get protection beyond that date, everybody will go into the care scheme. So all groups are treated exactly the same. Now, because there is actually a lot of work, particularly for pension administrators, to do to get their system sorted out, to work through the large number of individuals this is going to impact, it's unrealistic for them to be able to do that and get it right, which is of course critical, by the 1st of April 2022. So the government have given them up until October 2023 to do that work. So it means an individual, come the 1st of April 2022, moves into care and future pension accrual is in that scheme, but there will be a lag in a sense up to, and that's the latest date, October 2023, before the administrators will have dealt with the period that was in the remedy period.
That actually flows brilliantly onto the next question. Is if we're talking about October 2023 as to when pension administrators can produce this data, how do members who are about to retire before October 2023 get a pension statement, get a forecast, can make decisions around their finances and when they should retire?
So I guess one of the things to recognise is the government, and one of the outcomes of the consultation process is that rather than individuals having to make an immediate choice, i.e. a choice not quite now but certainly within the next year or so, about whether they wanted the remedy period in their original scheme or care, the government have confirmed they're going to do that by way of what they call a deferred choice. What that means for the individual is that they will get on an annual basis their pension statement as they're used to, but they'll get two sets of figures. One if they'd opt to be in the legacy scheme, the original scheme, and one if they had that time in the care scheme. So they'll get that, so they'll have an idea as they're working on as to what choice A and choice B looks like, but they will only actually make the choice as to which they want at the point of retirement. Now, the benefit for the member is that at the time that you're about to retire is when you've got the absolute most knowledge of your personal circumstances, because there's an element of crystal ball gazing, isn't it? If you're 20 odd years away from retirement, will I be married? Will I have children? What will my circumstances be? Whereas if you're making it at the time, you know these things, so it gives you a lot more certainty, and there's a lot less predictions, or when I say prediction, forecasting. What are you going to get in the way of pay increases each year? What rank will you be? There's a lot of unknowns that you'll bottom out if you do it at the time of retirement. So the idea then with that is that there's no mad rush for the vast majority of people. So getting it right and giving the administrators the right opportunity to get their systems set up, software, etc., makes sense. And the drive is actually on for the administrators to do it quicker than October 2023. That's like the hard stop. It's not a target to be aimed at. In relation to people who are about to retire, the government do recognise that they need clearly information much quicker than that. So they've made it clear that they intend to prioritise that group, and they've also, and they did issue some guidance actually before the consultation outcome came out, advising administrators that they should look to offer people who are approaching retirement the ability to make the choice as to which scheme they wanted the remedy period in at the point of retirement. Unfortunately, the way that document was written has caused quite a lot of confusion with administrators and wasn't the most helpful. So the government have taken that on board, and the Treasury are now creating a revised document with clearer guidance to put out to administrators. The stated intention, and it says so in the response to the consultation feedback, is that people who are about to retire will be given the option at the point of retirement as to which scheme that they want to be in. Now, the downside to that is, of course, there's still a load of work to be done, which means that whilst individuals will make the choice now, there is always the slight risk that the final figures won't be right, depending on what decisions are made, and individuals may need to be made good, or in fact need to make good if they've been overpaid. So there may be some correction, and that will be the caveat. So we'll do what we can for you now. Say we, it's not me, but we'll, do what we can for you now, but you need to recognise that you might need to make that good if it turns out, for example, there's a tax implication or whatever when they start to do the back calculations.
That's absolutely fine, and members will welcome that. But do we have a time frame that this is going to take place in? I know the government is saying, we're mindful that these officers are retiring now. We've got people retiring for ill health, and we've also got 43 forces that deal with things in 43 different ways. So what you've said, we know, for example, that Essex is already undertaking this, but there's a hell of a lot of forces that aren't.
That's right.
So at what point can we start to see standardisation that every single force is going to do this?
I mean, ever since the original guidance came out that wasn't fit for purpose, we've been on the case. We've raised this, I've raised it repeatedly, both in the Scheme Advisory Board meetings, but also separately, all the way through to and including actually the Home Secretary. It's a Treasury-driven document. We are told it's been raised at ministerial level with the Treasury, and the Treasury are prioritising this. Interesting, there's been a recent employment tribunal decision which confirms that there is a requirement on the employer to get on and to rectify this stuff. It's not easy. No one's pretending it's easy, because obviously it's interlinked with individuals' taxes and all the other bits and pieces that need to be sorted. But we are told, reassured by government, that this guidance is a priority and will be out imminently. If you're asking me what does imminent mean,
I am.
Unfortunately, your guess is probably as good as mine. But I do think that, given the critical nature of it, we are likely to see it in a matter of weeks rather than months.
I think that's going to be good news for a lot of members who find themselves in that boat. What about other members then who aren't imminently retiring, but want to have some idea of what their pension pot will look like? So someone who's retiring in the next 5 years, for example, but they might decide, well, I don't want to wait till I've got 30 years service. Can I leave now? Is there any way they can get some sort of projection or establish what their pension pot should look like with the remedy that's been undertaken?
I think there's probably two questions, in a sense, contained in there. So clearly, when it talks about people who are approaching retirement being able to make a choice now, that would or could well include people who have got over 25 years service and are over 50 in the 1987 scheme. So they should be able to access that information in exactly the same way as people who are have come up to 30 years service and are looking to go. In respect to the wider group, and it's an absolutely legitimate point, and again one that I continually find myself raising, as in fairness to other staff association representatives, it is fundamentally wrong that people paying into a pension scheme haven't got clarity in relation to what the value of their pot, for want of a better term, and I accept we don't have a pot in the strictest term, is, and that needs to be rectified. It's a legal requirement at the end of the day that you receive on an annual basis a pension statement, and that statement needs to be accurate, otherwise there's not much point having one. Now I do recognise that the world changed, so it was built, people were getting statements based on time in both the original scheme and care, and now as a result of this, those figures will be out potentially for people who have got longer in the legacy scheme. There is always going to be a lag while administrators work through this, and that's where this hard stop of October 2023 comes from. But the emphasis and the encouragement for administrators is to do it quicker. We have raised concerns, frankly, only the other week, and we will continue to raise concerns that on the face of it, if an administrator takes until October 2023 and you look at when annual benefit statements are run, you have a potential of it being 2024 before an individual gets a benefit statement with that accurate information. That to us is unacceptable. We've made the point it's unacceptable. That's been fed back to the Treasury, and we will continue to make that point and to push it in the meetings that follow.
And from memory, I think you've raised this with the pension ombudsman as well.
We have.
Okay, so that everyone's aware. We just need the proper processes in place to be able to deliver on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is always going to be the reality that everybody can sit round a table and say that's completely undesirable, we don't want it, we want to do something quicker. You then have to look at all the hoops, of course, and there is always going to be an inevitable minimal time that you have to go through to get that sorted. I think there is certainly more that can be given in the way of useful information to members quicker than certainly 2024.
Thank you. Another regular question we keep getting is, for someone who was on the 87 scheme, I take myself as an example, and then I was transitioned into care. The consultation document talks about repayments. And overpayments and underpayments. So for people in the 2006 scheme, for them, they're not really worrying because in a sense, they're getting money back from government. But for someone like me, I have to pay government money. Why is that? I mean, why, when I was forcibly moved from one scheme to another, am I now going to have to pay for that benefit to be moved back?
Well, the important thing to do, and look, nobody likes paying money. Let's be fair, and we all pay a lot of money for our pension as it is. Having said that, we don't do badly out of the pension when we get it, but we do pay a lot into it. But what we've got to remember is the purpose, the legal challenge, the case that was won, and by definition then the remedy is about putting people in a level playing field, treating people the same. And the reality is that people who were in the 87 scheme were paying a different contribution rate to those in the care scheme. So if you're going to give somebody who has been paying the contribution rate for the care scheme 87 scheme benefits, it is impossible to argue that they shouldn't pay the same for those as the person who's been in the 87 scheme. Otherwise, the older group would end up having been discriminated against because they'd have paid more for the same benefit compared to the younger group. And I think people can get that. And with the right information, they can make an informed choice. They can see, what they would be paying in the way of additional contributions, and they can compare it to the benefits they're getting, and that's the way you make an informed decision. I think what's harder to get your head around, and certainly something I feel much less comfortable with as a concept, is this issue around interest.
And strangely, that leads me on to my next question on the factor of interest. So I'm pretty sure that people understand the contribution rates being different and making up that difference, not a problem. For people that are owed money by the government, absolutely government should be paying interest on it. But people who owe money the government wants interest from as well, for something that the government was responsible for. So this mess up wasn't the officers' mess up. This was the government introducing transitional arrangements, and now they want to charge interest for that gift. That just doesn't sit well with me. It seems unfair, it seems perverse, and for most of our members, they don't understand it.
It's difficult for me to argue with you. We were clear that we did not support charging individuals interest on any shortfall of contribution payments that has effectively arisen as a result of action that was imposed upon them by government. It doesn't feel right at all. The government position, of course, is that they're entitled to do so because the individual has had the use and the benefit, if you like, of that money that otherwise would have been paid for the period of time, and that's what the interest rate is meant to reflect. But I can't emphasise enough, I'm exactly the same view that I'm sure all of our members will have. At the end of the day, they are the victims in this. The court has ruled they were the victims of unlawful discrimination, and it seems utterly wrong that the discriminator is now charging interest to make on the payments to make good the discrimination they've caused. We will continue, I have to say, to look at any angle we have got to challenge that, both getting expert advice to see whether there's any legal route you've got to challenge it, and by raising it and taking issue with it throughout the scheme advisory board process and as we go forward.
Thank you. That's extremely reassuring, because on face value it doesn't sit comfortably and it doesn't make sense. But it's great that you're all over that.